Hello, hello. Welcome to my video talking about geographic inquiry, which happens to be what our next unit is all about. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering, what does inquiry even mean? Inquiry is basically asking questions. What we are going to learn about in this unit, and really in the beginning, you're going to be learning some of the basics of it in this G slide here, is how to basically look at things in another way. Some of you may remember learning about the scientific method in elementary school, or at least you touched on it. In social studies, we have something similar, and it's called geographic inquiry. So the idea of asking questions, looking at a problem and trying to solve it while following a scientific method or a process to make sure you solve it properly. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. Now, attached to this video, it should be in the same folder, or maybe attached to the same link, you will find this document right here. As I go through the G slide, you will work on filling out this document. It is called, well, Steps of Geographic Inquiry. And it's important that you keep track of this bad boy because the thing is, you're going to be using this as we continue throughout this unit. If you lose this, you might find yourself a little bit lost. So for the first few slides, I'll kind of walk you through how to fill it out, and then after that, I'll kind of just continue forward without bringing that sheet up. So, without further ado, let's get started. Let's try this again. Because obviously, this is not wanting to work for me. You were working earlier. There we go. Okay. So, the first step of geographic inquiry is asking questions. So, we've all experienced asking questions. I mean, it's all part of being a kid. You see things going on in the world that you don't understand, or maybe in this classroom, and you're going to ask, why are we doing this? That's what geographic inquiry is all about. And you'll notice here happens to be the first box of your worksheet. So if we click over here, now what you're going to do is this information that I have up on my board right here, you're going to fill out right here, okay? So asking a geographic question. So this is asking questions. It's usually out of all the steps of geographic inquiry, one of them that's pretty simple to understand. Everybody understands what asking a question is all about. And that is simply asking where, what, why, and so what. You know, what is going on, why do we care, and what's causing this, essentially. And you'll see when we get to an example later on. And as always, if I'm moving a bit fast, keep in mind this is a video, so feel free to rewind and pause so that way you can catch what's going on. The next step is acquiring. Acquiring meaning to collect geographic information. So when you ask what's going on, one of the things you're going to want to look at is, okay, well, when you ask a question, it's kind of like solving a mystery. Think Scooby-Doo, right? You see that for some reason, people aren't going to this spooky inn. Well, why aren't people going to this spooky inn? Well, to find out why they're not going to the spooky inn, you need to go into the spooky inn, find out what's scaring people away. Find out, are people imagining it or is something going on? So that's what this is talking about. Acquire geographic information, collecting our facts here. So use a variety of tools. Okay, and just check to make sure you can read it on there. So basically using a variety of tools and sources such as maps, interviews, photographs, satellite images, textbooks, and websites. So you're collecting your information. So once again, back to Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo and the gang come into town. They find out that there's this inn that's losing money. No one's going there, and they're trying to figure out why is that happening. And in order to do that, they're going to ask people in town about this inn. They're going to go stay at the inn. They're going to talk to the owners of the inn to try to gather information to figure out what exactly is going on. Why are people staying away from this place? The next step is organizing the geographic information. So, right now, remember, you're still filling out this chart. Remember, ask geographic information you filled out here. Then the next step, you acquire, you put the information there. Now we're into organize. Put the information here. So now you've collected photos, videos, you've written down notes from interviews. So you've got everything everywhere, right? Imagine your bedroom. For some of you, I know some of you are very good about keeping your room clean. I know, I see you, I'm calling you out. You have stuff everywhere, you can't find it. You know, if you need something quick, how are you going to get it? Now we need to organize it in a way that, first of all, we can find the information and the information makes sense. So this is where we're going to create maps, graphs, charts, diagrams, and tables. Also develop oral or written summaries. Um, so Scooby and the gang have found out about this inn. They went ahead and they went to the inn. They collected videos. They collected interviews. So now they need to put this information in a way that makes sense. So, you know, maybe when they went to the inn, they heard spooky voices going on at night. Okay, maybe they're going to record that video. Maybe when some of the others in the gang, Velma, Scooby, Shaggy, you know, all the others, went and interviewed people, they got information from folks saying that people don't like to stay there because weird things go on there at night. Maybe they took photos and they caught weird, spooky images. So they've got all this stuff collected. Now they're going to put it together in a thing that makes sense. So what they may do is they may take all their interviews and maybe write up a report explaining what happened when they spoke to the interviews to see what common things they find. Those videos and pictures they took, maybe they'll put them together on a bulletin board, or maybe make a digital G-slide like this one, so that way they can sit back and look all their information in one place. Charts, tables, you know, maybe making charts comparing, okay, well, here was the inn when it first opened back in 1954. It was a really great place, and everybody liked it, but then all of a sudden, 10 years later, all of a sudden people start not coming there anymore, and they say it's because they start hearing weird noises and strange things go on at night. So, you know, the idea is you're going to organize everything into one area so that you can look at it and compare all of your facts. And then you're going to analyze the geographic information. So you're going to sit back and take a look and figure out what's going on, right? Scooby and the gang took a look at their charts, their videos, their poster boards, and they figured out, okay, well, based on our research, we have reason to believe there's a ghost at this inn. That for some reason, when the inn first opened in 1954, it was totally cool, and then come 1964, something weird happened. Well, as they did their interviews, they found out that many people think the place is haunted, but in reality, they find out as they do their research that they don't think the place is actually haunted. They actually have reason to believe that there was a competing motel down the street that didn't like this new one that opened, and so that, you know, they're starting to see that maybe this competing motel, we'll call it Motel Schoolcraft doesn't like the inn, and Motel Schoolcraft has been saying all kinds of bad things. So now they're starting to come up with theories that maybe this isn't a ghost. Maybe somebody at Motel Schoolcraft has something to do with the spooky things going on at this inn. Because remember, it's all a mystery. We've got to figure out what's going on here. And then, here we go. And then we're going to answer the geographic questions. So this is where you're going to sit back, take a look at everything you figured out, and you're going to answer your question, right? So, like, one of the first things is, Scooby and the gang, they've taken a look at all this stuff. They've seen the motel, Schoolcraft Motel, has already been saying all this awful stuff about the inn. They know that the weird things at the inn didn't start happening until after they've been open 10 years and the Schoolcraft Motel started to lose business. So now they're looking back and they're realizing there's no ghost at the inn. They look through all their information. They find out that, in fact, the owner of the Schoolcraft Motel has actually been making people think the inn is haunted, so they won't stay there. Right? Or maybe they do some more research and they realize maybe that's not it. The Schoolcraft Motel doesn't like them, but there's something more to the story that we're not realizing here. So that's what that is all about. So the gang has done their research, they looked in the mystery, and now they're presenting to everybody what they think is happening. So now we looked at this, and I decided to look at it through the realm of Scooby-Doo, because at the time I'm filming this, it's October, it's spooky month. So I figured that'd be a really great example. But, you know, remember, we're talking about geography, right? This stuff that, we're talking about the world around us. When we're talking about geography, we're talking about the world around us. So let's go ahead and turn this towards a real world situation. So let's take a look at an example. So what I want to take a look at is the Aerial Sea. And the Aerial Sea is located right here between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Now, the aerial sea in its heyday was the second largest, small sea like this in the world. I mean, it was a huge place to go to. People fished there. There were fish that lived and thrived within this lake. It was huge. And people would fish out of there, make a living out of it. Farmers would depend on this place as a source of water for their crops. It was actually a very important place for this particular area in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan because this area is actually quite dry. So having this big source of water here was a really important thing. So what happened? Let's take a look. Here's the aerial sea in 2000. Once again, big, flourishing, lots of water. Very nice, right? But then a few years later, we start to see something happen. This is the same photo of the exact same area, and we see that the sea has dried up. That's kind of a big deal, right? That'd be like if the Great Lakes around Michigan suddenly started to dry up. That's not something that just happens overnight. And you see this, the sea was slowly drying up to begin with, but it got really, really bad between 2000 and 2012. So what happened? Now we're going to figure that out. So our first question, what is causing the aerial sea to dry up? What's making this happen, right? And how is this affecting the people in the environment? Because think about it. Remember what I said before. People depended on the sea as a source of water for their crops, for fishing, not to mention the wildlife that lived in that area, of course, depended on as a water source. The fish lived in that water, so the water's going away. So no water, meaning no place for the fish to live. So we're wondering what is causing all this to happen, right? So what's causing the aerial sea to dry up, and how is this affecting the people around them? So now we've got our question. Now we need to go ahead and figure out what kind of information we need to answer these questions, right? So first of all, satellite images that have been taken over time to show the drying, which we saw at the beginning of this, right? We saw that before and that after photo. So what else would we need? Maybe some photographs taken at sea level. So maybe, is there something we can see from the ground that maybe we can't see from the air? So maybe we need to collect some more videos, interviews, collect water samples from the aerial sea. Is there something in the water that's causing it to dry up, that's causing it to maybe evaporate faster? Because water, as you may remember from the water cycle in elementary school, water naturally evaporates up into the air. But there's also a good amount of water that comes back down into lakes and rivers through rain and things like that. But for whatever reason, the water is leaving the aerial sea faster than it's being put back in, and we want to know why. So maybe collecting water samples can give us an answer. Maybe we can also take a look at different types of maps of the area and see, okay, well, is there something that we're not seeing in our satellite images that maybe a map can explain to us? Like, is there a dam being put up? Is our rivers being diverted, making the water go somewhere else? What's going on? And then any information regarding a similar problem with the body of water in different parts of the world. So having a big body of water dry up like that, believe it or not, the aerial sea is not the first situation something like that has happened. There have been times in history, both ranging from hundreds of years past, even in the recent past, where those things have kind of happened, and there's all kinds of reasons for it. So maybe we can take a look at the other times in other areas where bodies of water dried up and see if we can compare and see, okay, well, aerial sea, maybe there's something aerial sea had in common with these other places of water that dried up. Okay, so now let's assume that we've gone ahead and collected our photographs, we have collected interviews, we have collected water samples, all of that. So now we've done that, and now we need to put it together, right? One of the things I often tell students is pretend that you are working on basically a project for me. You've collected the information, and now you need to put it together in a nice, pretty little package to present to the class or present to your teacher. So that's what we're going to do with this information. For our example here, for the aerial sea, we've collected all the photographs, so maybe we can put those together in a G-slide. We've collected all these interviews. Okay, let's go ahead and write up a summary explaining what we learned from the interviews. We've collected water samples, so let's go ahead and make tables and graphs showing is there something changing in the water over time. Maybe we can make comparison and compare and contrast tables. You know, maybe if we, as we did our research, we found there was another lake in another country where a similar thing happened, the water dried up. So maybe we can put Lake A in one side and Area C on the other and compare and see what were the differences between the lakes and what were some similarities in terms of what was causing this to happen. And of course, making a map showing that what's going on is huge. You know, we've talked about the importance of maps in our previous unit. And remember, maps aren't just something that you can look at to tell you where things are. They can also be used to help teach you. Remember how we talked about GPS and GIS. GIS helps us put information on maps, right? So showing the people a picture of a map, showing the lake drying up like you all saw. You know, remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So showing the pictures that the lake's drying up, you know, having that proof that, see, people were not imagining this. The lake is drying up. Here's the pictures to prove it. So we've gone ahead, we've collected the information. Maybe we've gone ahead and in our example scenario, we presented it to the town, we presented it to scientists. Now we go into our next step, where how can this information be analyzed? Okay, so what are we looking for? We're looking for a pattern here. So what are we looking for when we're looking at all of our organized information? Well, you're trying to find, in our case, we're trying to see if we can figure out what's that problem that's causing this lake to dry up, right? So maybe we're going to try to figure out when did the lake first start to dry up? Did it start in 2000? Did it start earlier and then it got bad? We're going to compare the aerial sea with data of another body of water with a similar problem. Remember, we're doing that to try to see, okay, well, is there a problem that another lake experienced that may be similar to the aerial sea, and we can use that to solve our problem? Identify potential causes. So remember those interviews that maybe we went around, we spoke to people, we did research, you know, we collected data, and maybe we can use that to find out answers. We can study the kinds of chemicals that show up in the water samples. You know, maybe we'll look at the water samples and find there's nothing wrong with the water, or we may look and find that there's something going on. That's why we need to take a look at the water samples. And then look for patterns that may exist in the interview data. So, see, did somebody mention something in the interview that is making us wonder what's going on? So, maybe when we were interviewing some people, we found out that there was a local government that was talking about putting dams in the rivers that feed water into the aerial sea, and that can be something that can help give us a little bit more information. Maybe that's what's going on in the aerial sea. The water source has been dammed up, and therefore it's unable to continue working like normal. And then using all that information, we can sit back and take a look and figure out, okay, well, we did our research and we found out that, oh, okay. Well, based on a lot of the research we found out that there was actually the Soviet Union that had decided in the 60s that it was going to go ahead and dam up some of the rivers surrounding the aerial sea and use that water for irrigation elsewhere. Well, when that happened, the aerial sea stopped getting as much water fed back into it from those rivers, and plus farmers and people continued to use the water a lot faster than the rain was able to refill it, and that's what's causing the aerial sea to dry up. Which actually, that's a true situation. The Soviet Union actually went in, decided that they wanted to go ahead and focus on making their areas a very big, helping them make money by growing crops. It was cotton, and because the area is so dry, they need a lot of water. So what they did was the two major rivers that feed into the aerial sea, those were dammed up, and what happened was the aerial sea wasn't getting as much water. So let's review, okay? So remember, the 5 steps of geographic inquiry are: 1, we're going to ask geographic questions, see the problem, ask why it's happening. 2, we're going to gather geographic information. 3, we're going to organize it, right? Remember, we don't want to look through a random notebook with notes everywhere. We want to look at them in a nice, neat, or presentation that's easy to understand. 4, we're going to analyze the geographic information. We're going to look for patterns, see if we can figure out what that missing puzzle piece was to solve this. And then finally, 5, answer the geographic question. Okay, now after looking at everything here, do we have our answer here? Let's see. So that's what we're looking at when we're taking a look at it. All right, folks, that's it for geographic inquiry. Hopefully that answered all your questions. As always, feel free to reach out to me if you need anything else.